Welcome to Beyond the Surface. Today we go beyond the surface with Coach Glenn Farello. I've gotten the pleasure to know Coach Farello for the last 5 years, and he has some awesome accolades that he's picked up over the years. In 2012, his team, which was actually my first year with Coach Farello, went undefeated in the Catholic League. And for those that aren't familiar with the Catholic League in Washington, D.C., it's the toughest league in the country. And it was really a magical year. And that was my introduction to Coach Farello. And since then, his team also won that league in 2014. Along the way, over the years, Coach Farello has coached over 60 D1 players and athletes. He also has been named Coach of the Year 9 times and really has built a tremendous program at Paul VI, which is in Fairfax, Virginia. So we're pleased to have Coach Farello for Beyond the Surface and hope you enjoy. So, Coach, what we're going to do to start out is I'm just going to put you on the hot seat right off the bat. So I'm going to ask you for your preference. And I want you to think about this. I know you were a player for a lot of years, but I really want you to give a coach's perspective on how you look at these things. And the deal with these preferences are you can only pick one. So we're just going to hit you rapid fire right away. So the first preference, do you prefer preparing or performing?
Performing.
How about as a player? Was it always performing for you?
As far as picking one of the two, as far as what was more important, the performance.
And as a coach, did you prepare differently from a mental standpoint as a player, or is it pretty similar as a coach versus a player?
Oh, completely different. As a coach, yeah. I mean, most of your time is done with the preparing. As I answer the question as far as preparing or performing as a coach, it's for what I want on my players.
Got it.
You know, I'd rather them perform. Sometimes they don't prepare. You know, they can't prepare as well. So I'd rather them. You know, if I was going to have the choice, I'd want the performance. Just because, you know, it's almost like the whole idea of the practice player versus a game player. I'd rather have a guy that is gonna show up when the lights are on than necessarily a guy that's going to be, you know, able to show every single day in a practice setting.
And one of the things I think is interesting about you as a coach, and I've spent a lot of time around a lot of different coaches, you enjoy the game. You enjoy that performance. You enjoy the atmosphere, the energy, the moment. Has that always been the case for you as a coach, or is that something that you've had to develop over your years?
Now, I think what was great about coaching in our game is it's so fast-paced. I often make fun of my friends that are football coaches or baseball coaches. They get plenty of time to figure stuff out. You know, they get to chew sunflower seeds in a dugout and then ponder whether or not they're going to bring a reliever, going to put a steal sign on, all that type of stuff. Football, play lasts for 5 seconds. They got 30 seconds to figure out what they want to do next. Basketball, you got to decide things so quickly, and you have to have a feel for the game. So I think it's the adrenaline rush is during those games is a lot of fun, trying to just figure out what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, how can we fix it, where's this all going. It's trying to control chaos, and I kind of enjoy that.
So in that moment, I would say there's two types of players. There's yes sir players and why players. Do you prefer coaching yes sir players or why players?
Why players.
Why?
Yeah, that's because they want to know. They want to figure out what's going on. The yes sir players are just going to tell them what you want them to do. A couple years ago, we were doing time and score situations during practice. Most coaches do that, and I decided to start instead of having a coaches coach it or myself coach it, I had the players coach themselves. And we were really found out they had no idea why they were doing any of the things that we had them do. Now during games, they'll do exactly what we want them to do. Hey, do this. During time and score, they knew, okay, I'll do whatever coach says. They had no idea why they were doing them. So it was great to watch them try to figure it out on their own terms and try to to try to figure things out. So the why players are the ones they're going to advance quicker, And in high school, it's all about development, right? And so if the yes sir players are just going to listen to do what you do and do what you ask them to do, they're never going to get any better. They're not going to have that big range of development.
And with that in mind, do you prefer a system or autonomy?
Oh man, that's tough. Almost a hybrid, and I know I'm supposed to pick one or the other. I will in that being following the rules, I'd say autonomy because, and basketball coaches know we say, you can either teach kids how to play or teach them plays. I'd rather teach them how to play. Basketball, to me, 75% of it is just it's in the flow of a game. You know, it's not the structure, it's not the system. It's just making the basketball plays. But it's grabbing a rebound, it's diving for a loose ball. It's recognizing how, you know, what play to make on a 3-on-2 break, recognizing and reading things. So the autonomy is really important. Not making them robots. So if I had to make a choice, I would. But you know, it's a hybrid.
Has that question been asked more in the last 10 years? I feel like we hear system, and I'm just curious because you've been at this now for a while. So is system something that has become more emphasized, especially in high school basketball, than maybe it was 10 years ago?
No, I think what you see right now with it used to be, you know, coaches were married to specific systems and plays, and this is what they believe in offensively. I think what you've actually seen is maybe a little bit different. The coaches are starting to figure out how to teach kids to play, you know, with some basic rules. So, you know, people call it a system. It's really all it is everyone trying to figure out how to get them to play, if you're playing pickup, and play the right way.
Sure.
You know, you don't need a coach on the sideline when you play pickup. You don't need players run when you play pickup. It's a pick and roll here, it's spacing there, it's the right decision on a dribble drive move, getting a paint touch, that type of stuff. So I think that we see more of that, and coaches looking and going, well, how can I create that atmosphere within a system, if that makes sense? And so if anything, that's what I see more of.
Perfection or progression?
Progression.
Why?
Because you're not going to reach perfection, and not enough people will ever reach perfection. You may have a great player, an All-American type player who's very high level, but the majority of what you're going to do as a coach is going to be dealing with kids that just, your job is to progress them. I'm in high school, I get a chance to work with 14, 18-year-olds. It's the development piece of it. So the progression is where the excitement is, the enthusiasm is. Perfection, but it's unattainable as it, you know, in our sport, and not realistic to me to set as a goal. But the progression is fun to watch, to see, you know, take a kid from, you know, being here to get them to there. I think that's everything.
As a coach, do you prefer the most valuable player or the most improved player?
Oh, wow. You know what? There's not enough credit sometimes to that most valuable player. I appreciate the most improved player, but I'm going to pick the most valuable player because I think sometimes they're overlooked in what they sacrifice and what they do to help a team win. Tillman Dunbar from a 2012 team, as you remember, was here last week with our guys, and, you know, he was the unanimous pick as the MVP of a team. That, you know, a lot of the other guys had the bigger accolades. You know, the All-Met Player of the Year was someone different. Another All-Met Player of the Year was named, All-State, all that type of stuff. But we appreciated what he brought every single day as the most valuable player to our team, as a point guard, as a leader. And I think those types of examples, sometimes those MVP kids, the responsibility, because what we're seeing right now in our sport is so much of kids not being able to step up. You know, I'm a senior now. I'm supposed to act like a senior. I'm supposed to perform in that bigger role. They all want the role. They all want the shots. I'll take that back. They all want the shots. They all want the accolade. They don't want the role, the responsibilities of it. So I'm going to go with that most valuable player to say. You know,
you're almost saying like the person that's saying, no, put it on me. Like I'm comfortable in those shoes and walking in those shoes. Where maybe the most improved player, the way you're viewing it, is like, yeah, they have almost nothing to lose. It's like, just keep going. And yeah, it's great. Like, you're not discounting the most improved, but maybe the pressure or the weight that you carry as a most valuable player, which is the reason I like that question right now. If you look at the NBA landscape, is like, I thought Steph Curry should have been the most improved player this year. And, you know, it got discussed a little bit as the votes came in. He got some votes for most improved player. And, you know, if you think about, you could name the past maybe 5 or 6 MVPs in the NBA, it's much harder to name the most improved player. But I liked how you viewed that from a different lens and say, like, no, everyone likes the most improved. It's like that freshman who comes in to your program and no one's really expecting anything, and they just come in and do great. And okay, that's awesome. Now how do you handle being a sophomore?
Right.
Which we've talked a lot about over the years.
Absolutely.
Resume or eulogy, which is more important to you?
Oh. I've heard this question before, and you know, I would say eulogy, and based on this, it's like, I really don't give a damn what I'm doing right now or what I've done. You know, it doesn't matter. And none of what I've done matters to the kid I'm coaching right now. So the next wave of kids don't care what we did back at Roosevelt, back what we've done so far here at PVI. They may be interested, they may like be drawn to some of the success that we've had and all of that, but they're going to care more about that direct relationship that they have with the current staff, with myself, with the school, the connections that they have. So eulogy is going to be more important because that's going to be the whole thing when it's all said and done. You know, ours is never ending either. You know, you think resume halfway through what you're doing, and it's like, man, I'm not done. I'm just not done. I had a player, Delonte West, years ago when he was just named All-Met Player of the Year when I was at Roosevelt and getting all these accolades. And he said, Coach, and he read the write-up. What a great write-up. And he's like, Coach, man, I'm not done. It makes it sound like, you know, and to him he says, like it was like a eulogy. Like, my basketball career's done. I'm still moving on. So it was more of a resume in that sense, but I was like, what a great perspective for a player to be like, I'm not done. And as a coach, your work is never done. Now, once I retire, I might be feeling a little bit different as far as, you know, what we looking back on what we've accomplished. But now I'm very prideful of what we've done. I'm very prideful of the players that have come through and the impact that we, you know, the piece that we can help them as they navigate their basketball careers and their lives. But now we can't get caught up in that kind of stuff.
I have a saying, we never arrive.
Yeah.
And I think, like, a lot of times people say, I've made it. Like, I'm a D1 basketball player, or I'm starting at Paul VI, or I made it to the NBA, and it's like I've arrived. And you never arrive, right? Like the moment you think like, oh, I've made it, is the moment you're probably screwed. So I think that idea of like, no, I've never arrived, I've never made it. You can appreciate, you can have satisfaction in the work you put in and the accomplishments, and smile when you get a trophy and all those good things. But having that idea of like, I'm always a work in progress, I'm always evolving. Even if you retire, now maybe you're evolving into something different. So that idea of never arriving, I think, is pretty.
And that's actually the flip side of that is the biggest problem we have in our sport right now with our younger players is that they think they've arrived. You know, when they've gotten a certain amount of attention or a certain amount of success.
Scholarship offer.
Yeah, and it's like you haven't done anything yet. You know, and that is an issue. Now let's also make sure we understand, like, we do like the attention, we do like the appreciation for your work, and it does give you that sense of satisfaction, and you can, you know, and that confidence, and confidence for a coach is as important as for a player. You know, no matter if the players in high school, you know, we see it all the time at the NBA level. The guys talk about confidence. Professional players talk about confidence all the time. So the same thing for coaches. We need to have confidence, so there's definitely a confidence boost when you have success, and then, you know, it carries you through sometimes to the harder times, the tougher times when you're dealing with things that you can smile every now and again with a victory or with a championship.
It's such a delicate balance, which is like, how do I continue to believe in myself, and it's your self-belief, while also maybe having the humility to say, you know what, there's things I can still improve upon. So I think you can still have belief in yourself while still acknowledging, hey, maybe there's some things I need to work on. This one I'm especially curious to hear about from your perspective and getting to know you. Do you prefer your generation or your parents' generation?
Oh,
and I knew that I would get that reaction.
That's a good one. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say my parents' generation, because they're tougher than we are. They were, you know, they fought in the world wars. They molded and sculpted what we are as Americans, and if you look at it from a landscape of sports, they were all in. Competition meant something. Winning was important, but doing it the right way. The value system, I think, was stronger with them, and it always will be. And if you look at the success of anyone that's in my generation, it all comes from them. And that kind of, you know, understanding of how to live. Does that make sense?
Do you think your parents would say the same thing about their parents' generation?
That's a really good question. Well, knowing the humility that generation has, or as far as their perspective on life, they probably would give all the credit to the generation above and before them. You know, so you know, that spans a lot of time. But I think it was their generations, my parents' generations, that kind of carried the torch the furthest. You know,
it's such an interesting conversation because I think adults typically do look up to their parents in that way and have that reverence for who came before them. And I think there's a question mark about the generation now, is do they revere the generation that came before them. And it might be that it will take them until they're 30 or 40 to then process that. But it's an interesting question. In the generation we're in now, I think in some ways lives very moment to moment and appreciates where they are today. And you wonder, is there that ladder almost?
I think you said something really interesting right there. I don't know if they have that appreciation for what the people that paved time for them before them. For my players, Max players that are in their 20s and 30s right now. They look down at this generation and go, and we all do, right? That's natural. We all do. But I don't know if the younger generations really do revere their parents' generation. They may appreciate their parents, but I don't know if they really appreciate what has been paved before them as much as we do and our parents before us.
It's such an interesting conversation because I've started to look into and research how that works. Because I think we always look at the generation below us and are like, what the heck? Yeah. Because we put ourselves up a little more as we get older and wiser. But I do think it's I think the generations all bring their own little spice to life, but generations get labeled, but that idea of before me or my generation is interesting. Yeah. I think my answer to that is my generation. And I just...
Oh, your generation's not my generation.
But I'm considered a millennial, but 40% of millennials don't consider themselves to be millennials. So no one even knows what the heck they are anymore. So it's all very interesting to me. Positive feedback or negative feedback?
Wow. So, it's funny. I actually have always believed in negative feedback. That trumps everything for me because I just want to know what you need to do to get better. I always thought that parents, real competitors, want to know. They don't want. Alpha Bangura is one of the best players I've ever coached. He played professionally for the last 14 years. Was really my first guy at Roosevelt. Alpha, every time a college coach came in, to evaluate him, to offer him a scholarship, he'd just say, "Coach, what do you think I needed to get better?" He didn't care about all the good stuff they said. And I always looked at that and said, "Wow, that's why this kid's special, because he just wants to get better. That's all. He's hungry so much for that." The negative feedback to me is important. And again, it's how you want to phrase it or what you consider negative feedback. But I think it's important to hear what you're doing wrong so you can fix it. Because if you're any good in this game, you kind of know what you're doing right.
And here's where I want to just dive a little deeper into your story. Your dad was a principal. Growing up, him being in the education system, were you someone as an athlete or even as a student, did you take on the negative feedback, or did you sort of crave positive feedback, or can you sort of go to high school and go back to how you looked at that?
So I guess I came home if I ever complained, which we all do, right? We go home and our coach did this, or we should have done that, and this and that. And then my father would just look at me and say, "So what are you going to do about it?" Like, that was the answer. So what are you going to do about it? It wasn't, "Hey, I agree with you," or "You're wrong," or this or that. It was, "So what are you going to do about it?" My father tells a joke all the time. It was like when he was my youth coach, and he tells a story about when I'm driving home one day, and I asked, "How do you think I played?" He goes, "Well, how do you want me to answer? Do you want me to answer as your father or as your coach? Because as your father, I thought you were great. You should have shot more. You should have done more. Coach should have played you more. Your teammate should have passed you the ball more." He goes, "But as a coach," and then he laid out a bunch of different things I did wrong. And I said, I'd rather you tell me how I did as a coach."
Interesting.
And so that kind of paved the way for me as far as, when I had games back in high school, whether I played baseball as well, I didn't care about any feedback. I did care about feedback from everyone that I got, but it wasn't validated until I got home. And I got my dad's feedback and it was all, "Hey, third quarter, you did this wrong. You did, this, that." And it was, that was important to me.
I love how you break that down too, because I think we now, especially people in my field, more than anyone, are like positive, 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 positive. One of the things I say is, no, it should be useful. Like,
yeah,
what's useful? And if you have something negative, but it's going to be really useful to that kid to develop. You've used the word develop probably 5 times in the conversation we've had today. If to help them develop, it's going to be honest, frank, negative, however you want to phrase it. If it's useful for them as a coach, your job is to figure out what's useful for them.
Right.
And it might be something positive, it might be something negative, or it might be something just in between the two of those. But thinking about it as useful feedback is so different than positive or negative. And I think almost too often we try to say, oh, coaches should be positive or teachers should be positive and just give them positive feedback. But if you're not being useful, if the kid already knows that and the kid doesn't need to hear it and the kid believes that, is it really any feedback that's worthwhile? And interestingly enough, I ask pro athletes all the time, like, who's your favorite coach? And they'll usually say the one that gave me like real useful feedback. So I like your perspective because I didn't give you useful as an option. I said positive or negative. And I think too often the PC answer to that would just be positive because they know, the camera's rolling. All right, I'm just a positive guy. Everybody likes a positive guy. But, all right, we're going to keep moving forward. Momentum or the moment?
Because I don't even know what that means, I'm going to go with the momentum. Because I think there's something very real in our sport that is palpable when you have momentum going.
We've had this argument for years, and one day I hope to just move Coach Farello a little bit away from the momentum thing, but that's a story for
It's emotion. It's what makes this game great. It's watching Brandon Slater go get a dunk and then he's feeling the moment, and that leads to the momentum of everything that goes on. That leads to the 10-0 run. That's what we always say, we're a 10-0 run waiting to happen. That's if we play the right way, if we're at our best, that's what we look like, and that momentum it's just fun to watch because 18-2 runs, 20-3. I mean, you've been part of it. You've seen what it looks like. That's fun. That is fun to see that momentum just switch, just kind of switch on, and it takes a life of its own.
Grit or grind?
For everyone listening at home, this has been a long time battle, and he started to win the battle with this because grit has been such in the forefront of everything. I'm still gonna go with grind because I gotta hold on tight. I like the grind. I mean, I appreciate grit, obviously. The reason we've always had these discussions is I love the grind because I think that's when you learn the value of lunch pail, hard hat, work ethic. So I think the grind is where kids and where adults, all of us, that's what our success is. I think rooted in being able to deal with the grind, being able to post every day and be consistent with it. Now you need grit for it, but I understand the question. I understand where you're going. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean that one and the momentum one have been long discussions for us over the years. And look, what I love about this conversation and what I love about Coach Farello is he's got his own mind. He's got his own way of thinking. And what's been great about me over the last 5 years working with you is like you challenge me and hopefully I challenge you in a certain way. And there's not a right or wrong to any of this stuff. It's how you see the world and how I see the world and the willingness to potentially change. Well, so also, I'll get him to back off the grind in like 3-5 years. But
I just want to add grit and grind, and I think that's the way I look at it. And I think it's and not just how we view things. I think it's also important how kids view things and how the players view it. And if they connect more with your message of grit, and which we've been doing the last couple of years, is that's been in the forefront of what we say and how you present it. I think that's more important. Is how is you going to reach them, and that seems to be a buzzword these days that the kids can kind of seize onto and hold on to. Where maybe years ago grind was one that we kind of held on to and we understood from a coaching perspective. So if there is a grit versus grind and the kids really identify with grit more so than they understand and identify with the grind, we got to go with grit. Because I think it's a very valuable way to look at it. So,
liked or respected?
One more time.
Liked or respected?
You know what? I think it's most people are going to say respected, and I understand why I would say respected. I'd say liked because we're losing when we focus too much on being respected. We forget that we're all human, and no matter what age we are. That everything should be, relationship based, and you should want to be liked. And through being liked, it's not just a pat on the back, and I don't care about being respected, but I think you start with like, and then respect will come. I think if you kind of start with saying, I just want to be respected, then you're almost dismissing the value of the importance of you said earlier about the relationship building. How can you build a relationship with someone if someone doesn't like you? You can't. I don't understand. I'm 46 years old. I'm not going to, have a strong connection and relationship with someone that I respect. There's a lot of people I respect. And if I don't like them, I'm not going to join forces with them. That's not someone that I'm going to spend a lot of time with. In the bigger picture, in the bigger realm of things, would I rather be liked or respected? For people that don't know me, yeah, I'd rather be respected because I don't really kind of care whether or not they like me. That's their choice. I'm not going to be able to sit there and worry about the guy up in the 18th row yelling down saying you don't know what you're doing.
One of your gifts is your likability. And I came here earlier today and saw you interacting with students that aren't basketball players, and you work in the school, and they like you. And because they like you, they then open themselves up and make themselves vulnerable to develop a relationship with you. And then the respect, to your point, can follow. And I think it can work both ways. And for different people, there's different answers here. But I think sometimes we don't give enough credit to being liked. And I like how you answer that. Love winning or hate losing?
The younger version of me hated losing. The older version of me loved winning.
Risk taker or rule follower?
Oh, rule follower. Yeah.
That was easy for you.
Yeah. I mean, why am I taking risks as far as putting anyone in jeopardy? It doesn't make sense to me. To put, I have a lot of coaches, a lot of players, a lot of people that buy into politics basketball, and that we do things the right way. Why would I don't want to jeopardize that by taking risks.
So I'm going to ask this from a player standpoint. Would you rather have been a starter on a losing team or a towel waver on a winning team?
So any player wants to play, bottom line. It'd be different. I thought the question was actually going to lead to a rotation player, someone coming off the bench. But you said towel waver. Towel waver doesn't get in the game at all. While I appreciate those guys, I'd much rather be a player.
Rotation player changes the dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're important, you're valued.
You're still impacting. I think it'd be tough for any player to say they'd rather be on a winning team and just waving a towel and never touching the floor. I'm not sure.
Did you ever experience that as a player? Were you ever a towel waver at any level that you played at?
Yeah. I had that a little bit in college, and then when I played overseas a little bit at the beginning when I first got over there. So it's interesting, and we all want to contribute. Every player wants to contribute. Yeah.
I think that speaks to value and importance, which are in the workforce. When you look at people that are satisfied at their job, it's because they're valued and there's some level of importance. And I think it's an important thing to remember for all of us is like, whether they like it or not, you're probably going to have a kid at the end of that bench who's going to be a towel waver. Yeah. And maybe that kid can be the best freaking towel waver on the planet, but finding value in that, the 10 to 14, figuring out their value, or maybe it's a young kid who's developing and finding the value and importance. But it's such an interesting dynamic because when we don't feel valued or we don't feel important, our motivation is often lacking.
Well, I think you said something interesting about all that, because that's a tough question to answer because there's a lot of different variables that go into it. So if I'm a towel waver but I'm a young kid and I'm waiting my turn, that's a whole different dynamic. If I'm a senior and I'm never going to, and I feel like I can contribute,
sure.
And that's something. That's why when we have conversations with the kids that may not play as much, we make sure they understand this is your role. Do you want to be part of this? But you're given the choice of being able to go somewhere else and playing.
Sure.
I think that's a dynamic that is important. We've had kids leave Paula 6 and go to a lower level league, or maybe they're post school, and get an opportunity to play more. I got to respect that. Sure. That's not a problem because that's a choice. We've had some kids stay and they want to be part of this and they'd rather be part of. I often preach being part of something bigger than yourself. No matter what your age is, to me the most important dynamic thing you can do. It's good for your soul. And so I think kids have to make that decision. But that specific question, I would say, no, I want to play.
Balance or specific obsession?
One more time?
Balance or specific obsession?
Oh, specific obsession. I mean, that's my life. I have no balance. I pray for balance. I search for balance, but no. I honestly think that specific obsession is not unhealthy either. It's what you want. It's your passion. It's what you love to do. It's what makes every great player great. Every coach, the CEO. It's an obsession. You have to give that kind of sacrifice to it. And so, I'd rather have that specific obsession. That's how I'm wired, and I think it's great. I want all my coaches and my players to have more balance, but me, no.
Yeah, that's probably the third one that we'll get to. We'll add that to the momentum and the grit one. Because I'm going to give one very tangible example where sleep. So there's all these studies about the value of sleep. I think a lot of people say, grind, don't sleep, wake up. And coaches are the freaking worst, because the coaches say, put a bed in my office, I'll sleep here. And I've been here after games, it's a Tuesday at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, leads to 10 o'clock, because coach is trying to figure out a way, what happened, what do we need to do differently? And you can see, coach is going to ruminate over this over and over, and it affects sleep. And then how does that affect performance? And it is tricky, though, because you see the elite of the elite, and a lot of times they get to where they're at because of a specific obsession. So I hear you on the focus of no, I'm going to be the best at what I do with this, and I'm going to leave no stone unturned. We could look at the CEOs, we could look at that. But there are people that I think find balance and do it that way too.
I think the specific. I think when you answer that, there's people that are happy with specific obsession.
Right.
If you're unhappy with it, then yeah, you're making a mistake. You need to find better balance. But those that are happy with that being so specific with it and not having that better balance, but they're happy. That's all that matters, is the happiness behind it. Sure. If you're happy or being balanced, be balanced. Yeah. And if that means you're a little less, quote unquote, successful, with your performance and or whatnot, then that's better. I mean, whatever it happens to be to make what makes you happy. I just know how I'm personally wired. Sure. But I will say this: I need sleep. I know I need sleep to be any good at what I do. So, the coaches that stay up all night and sleep 4 hours a day is ridiculous to me.
Yeah. Fear of failure or fearlessness?
Fear of failure. Fearlessness is fantastic. I think it's great. I think it's fun to watch some of those kids that you can just tell they're not afraid of the moment at all. But fear of failure is such a motivator. I had Jamal Robinson. Jamal Robinson came in last week, and he's at Hofstra now, and he's the winningest player in the history of our program. All the way back to the Roosevelt days. So. And it's 96 wins. And he told the kids, he goes, it wasn't so much that I wanted to win so bad, it was that I couldn't stand losing, and I didn't want to let my teammates down. That fear of failure motivated him more than the enjoyment of winning. So that fear of failure is such a great motivator for real, true competitors to me.
I have quotes from Usain Bolt, Serena Williams, Kobe Bryant, Michael Strahan, all talking about the fear of failure. Yet, if we go to a commencement speech anywhere in the country a couple weeks ago, they're going to say, don't fear failure. Don't be afraid to fail. And it's such that they don't mean the same thing.
They don't mean the same thing.
It's different.
Yeah.
But the message, the vocabulary that we use, you have to be conscious of the message that gets sent. They're saying, don't be afraid to fail, almost be fearless. But what I'm hearing from you is you have to have a healthy fear of failure for your opponent. You have to have a healthy fear of failure of, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure I don't fail. And if you lose that, then you're losing a little bit of an edge, or you're losing a little bit of a maybe specific obsession to get to where you.
I think maybe people are making that mistake when you say, don't be afraid to fail. That's that is saying be fearless, go after it. You can be. You can have that mentality, but you also have to, if you're going to be successful at all, you got to have some fear of failure. You just can't. I can't do it. I fear it. I don't want that feeling. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want that, to be, in this situation where I know I can be successful right now, so I can't, and it's more, it's more, I guess, it is about obsession. It's about caring. I think that's the way I would view it, is that fear of failure really means that you just care so much about the success of your group, yourself individually, that you can't lose. You're going to, it's for a kid who's studying. I mean, it's that 5 minutes before an exam, everyone else is talking, and you walk in a room and you spend that 5 minutes going through your notes one last time. It's that staying up for an extra 5 minutes, just go read through that worksheet or that study guide just a little bit longer. I tell kids all the time, I mean, when I got A's, it wasn't because I was the smartest guy. It's just I had a fear of a B. I didn't want it. I just didn't want it. I couldn't see it. I had to get the A. So it wasn't like, wow, everything's always rosy and cheery. I think it's completely a wrong way to look at the world if you're always going to try to be rosy and cheery. And you go back to the generation that came before us, that's why they were so successful. They knew life wasn't always rosy and cheery, but they found a way to make the best of it. So I thought that's what made them so great.
Very cool. Disassociate from pressure or embrace it?
Embrace it. Absolutely. I mean, come on. Why be in competitive sports? Why be in life if you're trying to separate yourself from pressure? Like, absorb it, take it in. That's what makes it fun.
I just want to take the time to thank you for doing this with us. Over the last 5 years, I have probably learned more from you than pretty much anybody in my work. We spent a lot of time in this office or on the phone or in your other office or wherever it might be at a restaurant. And as I said, I think there are things that I've picked up from you that have made me better at what I do and helped me focus on what I do. And being a part of your culture and your community has been really special. So.
Well, and thank you for having me here with us, and the contribution. Obviously, you can always say that we never won a WCAC championship until you arrived in 2012. So that is completely fact. And but no, the contribution you've made not only to the program, I think a lot of times it gets lost because you've obviously helped the kids and the team building exercises and the mental side of the game which is such a big part of what we believe in. Obviously, it's why you and I work together. But for your help, just with me as a coach. Being a sounding board has been invaluable. So a nice little plug for everyone to listen to about how great this guy is. And I appreciate you being part of us.
Thanks, Coach.
Everybody. Oh, man.